So, a couple days ago, I recorded something that was pretty much reading a script, and it was just, something I put together, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read it out, because that's how I always did my college assignments, but I feel like going forward, it's a little more organic to go just off the cuff, because, like, I feel like throughout my entire life, I've spent so much time online. I've always had the privilege of choosing my words so carefully to where having to actually like be in the moment is a skill I never really developed. So yeah, I have just stuff listed this time instead of it being a script, and we'll see where it goes. So, I've been thinking about a lot recently, and one thing that, so like, when you go through a breakup and you don't get proper closure, it can really gnaw at you, and it's really not at me. And it's something I'll get into, but I want to talk about primarily today. It felt like I had my therapy appointment today, and it felt like I said something I broke my therapist, in which the gist was when you're dating an anxiously attached partner and they repetitively break up with you, does it reach a point in where you finally making a decision, hey, this behavior I don't want to accept, and I'm cutting you off. I'm making the decision to cut you off. Is this making, an anxiously attached partner's worst fear come true? No, there's a lot more to that than that, but, and, my therapist has a context, and that's why I felt like she struggled to respond to it so much, but, yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about, so, you know, going through this, I started looking up a lot of stories that other people had. I think of something I recently saw where it was people who were in their early 20s and find each other again in their 50s, and they make a relationship out of that. And I'm just like, wow, that's incredible. But, over the past like month and a half, I've seen so many stories that it's just kind of hard to, like, I've seen so many stories, and none of them have really like felt like my story. Yet I keep searching for it. I keep searching for finding my story. It's like I don't have my own story. I have to find one that somebody else experienced, and I can look at it and say, oh, hey, this is what I had. I relate to this, and so this is how I know my story will go. It's to find some certainty to it. And I've just seen so many different scenarios to where I've reached a point and where it's like every person who tells me that it's 100% cut off and over doesn't know just as much as somebody who tells me, oh yeah, he's came back to you so many times now. Of course he's gonna come back again. Nobody knows, and that is something I have to kind of grapple with. But all these stories, I just read so many of them, and it reaches a point for me where I never find my story. And so I'm sitting here, I go there, I find ones that are similar, I find stories that I like, but none of it's mine. And just this kind of realization finally that every person can come and tell me, their story about how, their person was never really there for them, limerence or something. Or how, we found each other again in our 50s, None of those stories are mine. I will never find a story about what is going through my life. As much as I want to find this and find peace through it, to where I can find a story and say, this is me, this is what's going to happen, I know what will happen now. It's not out there, I can't materialize it. No amount of browsing will ever find it, I remember a video where it introduced me to an article series called Looking for Alice, which I think I mentioned previously, in which the author was saying, I don't like women, or sorry, no, I'm not a lesbian, I just like Alice, and the meaning behind it is that I like the person, I don't like a category of people, I like the person. And that resonated with me a lot because, yeah, I don't feel strongly towards most men. It's just this one particular man, So, just never finding my story and just realizing that I will never know where it will go has been revealing for me. Because you're trying to find that closure, but you're just not gonna get it. You're gonna live the rest of your life never having that closure. It's you're just not gonna find that story. And so, because I spent so much time trying to find this story, when I talked to my therapist about this, and we were talking about how do you manage a person who has came back to you so many times, you've been through 3 breakups with this person in 5 years, That's a lot. It's been a lot. And I've just kind of had to try to figure out where to draw the line on that, because in relationships, there's red flags and things that you don't cross, and I've learned that people aren't two finished people finding their match. It's two unfinished people who continue to choose each other and improve each other. They're finding each other together. And so this idea of, there's red flags, or certain things that you have in a person where you just have to cut them out 100%, was always kind of foreign to me. Because, like I said, the first time this person broke up with me, it was already so horrible. There should never have been a world where I ever try to take this person back, I just wake up one day and, it happened, And it's like, there's so much gray in this world of black and white. We try to apply this black and white to it, but it just doesn't work, because I told my therapist, I feel like I'm fulfilling the worst fears of my anxious partner by finally cutting him off. And instead, what I should be doing is by demonstrating through even his worst actions that I am willing to stand and see, it's like, right, if you don't if you don't like me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, you know? Am I willing to stand when someone's at their worst, you know? Even to the point of not having contact with them. And she didn't really have a response to it. She just kind of like, yeah, that's yeah, and it just struck me so oddly, because I think about it, and yeah, where how do you really do that? Because he's someone who's was always so anxiously attached to me. His biggest fear was always seemed to be abandonment, and I could be wrong, but that's what it felt like. And so I'm left in limbo where I've created a self-fulfilling prophecy where for me to move on, I am abandoning him. I am becoming that person he was most scared of me actually being. And I try to think, obviously it's not healthy for me. I don't feel good, I'm not in a good place, but there's just no part of me that wants to make that, that cut. Because, like, yeah, sure, there's other people I'd probably like, but I feel like I'm leaving someone so devastated. If I ever do, be like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna try to find someone else. Like, I mean, I'm sure I'll find someone else I like. It's not gonna be the same, but, every person's beautiful in their own way. I've been told by friends that, this isn't, it's not good for me, and this person's bad, and, the standard stuff your friends will always tell you when you go through that, because, they're like, oh, you're the man, you got this, you'll come out of it better than you ever were before. But I'm gonna carry for the rest of my life this feeling of, did I become this person's worst fear? Because it's just it's so hard to think that that's something that it would be reality. I just, because it's not like we haven't been through breakups before. We've been through them multiple times. They've been for various things. There's been a general trend of cold feet and not really knowing feelings, but and it's really hard to imagine that this person really doesn't actually feel something for you when you've one of the most cherished moments I have is he would wake me up. I don't know what time it was, but it was in the middle of the night, and he was telling me how he was feeling really anxious, and I just remember getting to hold him and tell him everything's okay. And it really just, it really felt like I was doing it. I felt like I did it. I was successful. I was actually able to provide that comfort. I didn't breed a fear of abandonment. I felt like I was breeding security. But this is another thing my therapist talked about also, in which I didn't, you know, I didn't really do a good job at setting boundaries. I kind of failed to create healthy boundaries. I thought that you would address anxious attachment by always supporting your partner, always being there, but my therapist introduced me to the window of comfort, or window of discomfort, whichever it was. But it's like, your window can open and close based on what you experience, and me always providing that comfort simply bred dependence instead of independence. I should have set barriers when, he was like, oh, I'm going to go do stuff with friends and I'm not going to be able to message you for a little bit. It's like, okay, that works. But then when he inevitably breaks it to still talk to me, I should have been like, hey, you were going to spend your time with friends. So I want you to go do that because it's good for you. And it will help you not rely on me to be your emotional regulator. And, I wish I knew that beforehand, but I didn't. And, it's again, and moving forward, I'm gonna have to live with this for, the rest of my life. I can't cut out the part of my brain that remembers this. It's not like I want to anyway. This person meant a lot to me, and I don't want to be someone to just cut it out, but it just brings so much pain to not know, to feel like you really messed up, you know. It's like I'm going to therapy to make myself feel better, but it just feels like I'm learning more and more what I didn't do correctly. So it's almost making it worse. So, closing out, the reason I decided to talk about this was one thing, it was something I just kind of felt like talking about. But also, I think that dating culture has the fixation on, the red flags and the never coming back and just lines you don't cross. I feel like that is something worth talking about because there's a lot, what is it? 1 out of 4 of Gen Z is not going to experience a relationship, which I think is exaggerated, but it's still noteworthy nonetheless. And I think it's because so much dating culture is just so cutthroat now, and people just are so ready to just jump ship and not, accept the fact that your princess or prince or in between charming, doesn't exist. You're not gonna find someone who's perfect for you. You're gonna have to build something with someone. I really thought with this person that I found, heaven. I thought I found my soulmate. I thought I found it. And despite that, I have been through so much hardship in the relationship. I've had to go, and I shouldn't say we have had to go through so much in this relationship to try to continue making it work. So, like, in my own experience, somebody who I really thought was perfect, I still have had issues with. We still had to navigate things. We still had to build each other, and you know, you're not gonna find that person. You're gonna have, like I said earlier, you're gonna have to build something. You're gonna be two unfinished people who keep building each other and growing. And so I think that's something that people need to think about more. Now, I'm not gonna say it's because I'm like on my soapbox, preaching. I don't know a lot. Like I said beforehand, I throw these ideas out here for them to be discussed. I don't throw them out there because I think I'm better than everyone. It's more just that if you never put it out there, if you never make it visible, nobody will ever find it. If you never, shoot your shot, your chance is always zero. If not doing anything is a lower chance than doing it and failing. So you have to just try. So that's why I still want to put something out, because it's not about me being better. It's just trying to put more ideas out there and hoping that the end result is, making my little corner of the world better, That's the only goal I can really set. But I think that's all I've got. Yeah, I'm gonna do more off the cuff. I think it's better. I have to edit it more, but it's not the first stuff I've edited. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your days on Earth, and yeah, that's all.